Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Q&A of Transhood. Before we get started, I wanted to quickly thank HBO for allowing us to screen Transhood, and our sponsor for this Q&A is Seattle Children's Hospital, along with partnering in the filming of Transhood, and we had a quick message from them.
Hello, and welcome to the Seattle Queer Film Festival hosted by $3 Bill Cinema. On behalf of Seattle Children's Hospital Research and Foundation and the QPOD Inclusion Network, Seattle Children's Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer Plus Employee Resource Group, we would like to welcome you to today's question and answer session with the amazing cast of Transhood. This movie resonated with members of our group because it connects the work and values we support at our gender clinic, where our aim has been to provide gender-affirming care since 2016 to children, adolescents, and young adults.
The portrayal of the growth of young people and their powerful journey of their development for them and their families is the same thing we aim to achieve with our mission of hope, care, cure. We hope you enjoyed the film as much as we did, and we hope everyone learned something new and that for some of us, we saw ourselves in it. Thank you for joining us today and enjoy the conversation with these amazing creatives.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Seattle Children's. All right, with us today, we have Sharon Liese, the director of Transhood. Thank you so much for joining us. Sharon is a critically acclaimed award-winning producer of amazing films and filmmaker, tending to focus on documentary-type films and TV, featuring untold stories and authentic stories of our communities and more. If Sharon, you could introduce our other guest.
Yes, thank you for having us. And I love the hospital's message. That was so sweet and wonderful. Yes, we have Debi Jackson with us, and she is a subject in the film, and her daughter Avery is featured in the film, and other family members as well.
Absolutely. Welcome, Debi. Thank you for joining us as well. So we have a few questions to get us started off. This is an amazing, amazing film. Thank you so much for the work that you put into it. 5 years of filming is quite a long time, and a lot can happen within that time. What were some of your goals with starting this project, Sharon, and also with engaging with this project, Debi? And Sharon, if you could start us off, maybe.
Sure. Well, I'm always attracted to coming of age stories, and I find myself doing filming for longer than I initially set out to do. And so that was, one of the things I love. I love to tell stories about kids, and when there was an opportunity to film with with the trans kids and their families, I really just embraced it and was just really thankful that the families and the kids were willing to tell their stories, and to be able to tell these stories over time, because I didn't want to just come in and do just a quick profile on these kids, which I was seeing a lot of at the time. And I knew that I wanted to engage with them for a long period of time. As Debi will tell you, we didn't know that it would actually be 5 years, but we did. But I did want to tell something that was over time, so that we could kind of see the evolution of their journeys, and not just sort of that single moment in time, because that doesn't really tell enough of the story.
Thank you. And Debi, how did you get involved with this project, and what were your goals with getting that engagement?
Well, being introduced to Sharon at a time when we had barely done any media, we were still kind of tiptoeing into advocacy and trying to figure out how public to be. I really liked this because I thought we would film for a couple of years, and then there would be a year or two of editing, and we'd have a little bit of a reprieve if we didn't want to be so public. But the other thing that I had really liked at first was when Avery was first transitioning and I was out looking for media, I could find maybe 2 older documentaries that had trans kids in them, and they were clearly something that was filmed over the course of a few days. So you might see 2 or 3 kids at different ages, but you were really limited to this snapshot of one point in their time. And I loved the idea of being able to track several kids, because even within the 2 or 3 years that we were involved in Avery transitioning before filming started, so many things in our lives had changed, and how she was presenting had changed, how other people accepted us or didn't accept us had changed. And a lot of people think that people just jump into supporting a trans child, and there's so many different complex components to it, depending on the age a child tells you they're trans, whether you need medical care or not, that I love the idea of really showing just how involved it is and how a family changes and grows and all the different things that we go through over time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that leads to, Sharon, how did you find the families that you got involved in? What was that process like? Because you really, I can imagine what relationships developed from that as well.
Well, I learned about this a place called the Transgender Institute in Kansas City, and approached them, and they were kind enough to allow me to come to like some of their support groups and meet with some of the families, and then I believe and introduced me to Debi. So I was able to, kind of establish myself as a filmmaker and talk to them, and then meet with the families. And then Debi actually was really instrumental in helping me to get introduced to some of the other families, and especially Phoenix's family. Because at that time when I was specifically looking for a gender fluid story to tell.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so Debi, you had also mentioned, well, actually, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So with those 5 years and the relationships that were developing from that, what was kind of your biggest takeaway from this process? How has your life changed from doing the filming of this documentary and being a part of the documentary?
I don't know if the documentary changed us because we were visible in a lot of other ways. I think for some of the other participants in it, this was a chance to finally get some of their story told. And probably Sharon had a much easier time getting into film with them, whereas Avery was involved in so many other things and I was traveling all the time that she would give Sharon a hard time about coming over and, being a typical 7 or 8 year old or whatever at the time, kind of sighing, oh, do we have to do this again today? Or not, how about next week? But I think a big part of it for me was this feeling of responsibility. I was out actively working as an advocate for the trans community, and I would get to know more people and even understanding things like gender fluidity and non-binary identities. When we started, I wasn't necessarily really adept at talking about those things, and knowing that some of these were issues coming up in the documentary and I needed to talk about them and I needed to go learn more myself in order to be a good representative in the documentary. I think overall it just pushed me to be an even better advocate and to ask more questions and develop even more relationships that I could come back and then share with Sharon.
Wow, thank you. And in the film, you can see that lends hands to many people learning and engaging with the film in a different way by being able to witness the stories and the way that parents are engaging with their youth and language that's being used and how parents are learning as youth are learning and how can we do better for each other. And this film and the work that you're disclosing you put into, and I'm sure others have as well, really did, I think, leave a very big impact on the households who've been able to watch the film. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I want to add that Debi was my go-to because I would just always ask her, is because terminology over 5 years changed, and so I asked her, is it what are they calling the surgery now, or what does this mean? And she would be so helpful in explaining things to me off camera and on camera, because we wanted it to be we wanted it to be educational, but we didn't want it to be like writing it, So it was really helpful to have Debi, a subject in the film, to be able to just sort of casually explain things to us so that people would understand.
Exactly, and creating normalcy in the representation that we're getting in this film is immense. What were your hopes and dreams with getting the film finished and done, and now it's coming out on HBO November 12th. How does that feel? How have you been impacted?
I've been impacted so many ways from this film, and I'm so excited for it to get out. I just love the stories, and I'm so proud of these kids and the families of, and how courageous they were to show their vulnerability. So I'm excited about that. And as time goes on and as things change in our socio-political environment, I'm hoping that this film really helps people to see where support is needed, and how desperately needed it is, and understanding, and I don't think I ever was trying to reach for the stars in terms of a far-reaching, thing where there'd be people changed by this who would never change otherwise. But I do think that in terms of allies and people who want to support, and people who just don't know and just don't understand how to be affirming and what language to use and how important being affirming is, like those kinds of things where people are open to it. We're seeing that already, that people are getting that. And that was, that's a big hope for me for the film.
Thank you. Yes. Big hope for the film, as well as giving all of us here in the communities as well to see ourselves and to see ourselves represented in various youth of ages and those stories that so many of us have that aren't shown. And so this is fantastic for being aired and for doing that for us. And it's hopefully the beginning. Hopefully we'll have more and more and more films and more representation and more of us on screen to make that impact. Wonderful. What challenges did you come across when putting the film together, or looking for funding, or for getting the buy-in, if there were challenges, or what were the highlights and things that maybe surprised you from engaging with this work?
Well, there's a lot there. One of the things, just from a filmmaking standpoint, it was really important for us to have the different ages and the different stories, because one of the things that we want to tell is that a transgender journey is different for each person. So, that was really important, to be able to have all 4 kids and all 4 families in this from the beginning to the end, because many times when you film something, you will know that, we might drop a family, or we might drop a character if we don't have time to tell the whole story. But I was so committed to wanting to keep all the families in, because each individual story told something a little different, and that was one of the points of the film. So that was definitely a big challenge. And then, as kids are changing and families are changing, and you have adolescents creeping in, that there's all those challenges with filming with kids who are going through their own challenges. So there was a lot, but it was very rewarding.
We have a question. How old is Avery now, and is she involved at all in advocacy? And we had a little bit of Avery's story in advocacy and what those conversations were looking like as you led that. So, Debbie.
Yeah, she's 13 now, 13 and almost a half. And she likes to say that she's retired from advocacy, but she's always open to considering anything that potentially comes along. But right now, she's really just said, being 12 is hard, being 13 is hard. I'm trying to figure out who I am and what I want out of life. So she's appreciating not having to come on and answer questions. But also, I think because we really tried to protect her privacy at first. And then when she wanted to be out and be public, we ended up out in public in a very big way. She's gone through answering all the same questions for so many years, and she's just kind of tired of it as well. And I've seen a lot of other advocates too. You kind of go through these waves. You ebb and flow in how public you are. Sometimes you just need to rejuvenate and all of that. So She said she's not opposed to being a big public advocate again in the future, but she wants to do it on her terms and when she's ready to come out and is comfortable and she has the message that she wants to deliver. So right now you get stuck with me and she's down the hall playing video games. But you know, I think she's really proud of being part of this, even if she doesn't want to come out and participate, because she knows that it's going to make a big difference to a lot of kids.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I think that it's also important that what we learn in the film is how Debi and Tom followed Avery's lead. And I think that, you know, that was because I know what I've learned from Debi is that there are a lot of kids that initially do have this, like, you know, have this euphoric sort of approach to it, like, oh, I'm affirmed at home and I want everyone to know. And then they sort of, after a while, kind of go, well, Wendy, I don't want to be so public. And you know, and Debi and Tom had to kind of ride that roller coaster with her and figure out like where they could say, okay, enough, you know, and you're saying enough. And even, you know, I just think it's really complicated. And having watched it myself, I see how complicated it is because Avery is so committed to wanting to see change in the world.
Mm-hmm. Rightfully so. Mm-hmm. Rightfully so. And I that was one story that I really appreciated, seeing how Debi, you were supporting those conversations and allowing Avery to make those choices fully educated. Do you have advice for parents along various pathways that they may be with their youth?
Ooh, in terms of being out in like advocacy or publicly,
in terms
or
of
just anything?
Well, I mean,
I mean,
it really could go either way.
We could go into getting her to do her chores every week, which I would like advice in the comment sections. But no, I think one of the things is when we started public advocacy, we were at a very optimistic time. So many positive things were changing. You know, the government was supporting us. The Obama administration from top to bottom was coming out and saying, we see you, we hear you. I mean, Loretta Lynch said that I sobbed. I still remember where I was sitting when I heard her give a speech talking to the trans community directly. So many things were different. And one of the scenes that's in here, I had asked, you know, you asked Sharon, were there any difficulties? I was difficult because I was like, you can't show this. We can't talk about these things. And then later I had forgotten about it. One of the scenes is when we're talking to her about what happened at Pulse and did she want to go be in a parade. The day that Pulse happened, I had someone on Facebook start sending me all kinds of threatening messages, and they were threats about her. I know she'll be in the parade. And I was freaking out and had to go and talk to police and whatever to talk about that. And that's not in for context because Sharon valued me saying, please don't do this. I don't want to give this guy any fuel, when we thought filming would wrap up, you know, shortly after that. Those are the kinds of things that happen that you don't really see all the behind the scenes conversations of, that we were talking about the backlash from the public. We need you to be safe. After National Geographic came out, people were just parking in front of our house. Like weird things were happening. And we really had to put safety at the forefront of everything we were doing. And that's a lot to have a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old hearing. And that was part of it too. That was a whole different world. We didn't want her to be out there and be that visible. And we didn't want her to have to feel the weight of all of that. We wanted to protect her from it. But when people are parking in front of your house and your kids look out the window, they see it. So it was a matter of having really important, big conversations, but in an age appropriate way and not making her more anxious. And that was one of the reasons too, we just decided to pull back. And that's what I think a lot of parents need to think. You might be in a nice little bubble in your community and you have support, but once everything's online, the entire world can literally talk about you, send you messages, share your address and phone number, and do all kinds of crazy things just because they think it's fun. and your child might not really want to deal with that, and you might be scared and you might not want to deal with it. So I just caution people to be really thoughtful about how much they share and how often they share, and be really safe about it too.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I really hope that you all are finding safety now. That is extremely stressful to have to endure, and thank you for your transparency as well. As we shift a little bit, where are all of the youth now? Do we have any updates on what's happening in their lives? We had such a great story, and now we're all curious.
Well, I'll talk about the other three. Phoenix continues to identify as a boy, and is in public school, but I'm actually not sure if it's remote right now. It might be, and doing well. Lena is working at a makeup counter for Dior, and seems pretty happy. Jay is in college, and I know it's virtual, and also working really hard in a supermarket. So he is very busy, and and doing well.
Awesome. Thank you. And how is Avery doing now at 13 and a half?
She's good. She actually just announced a couple of weeks ago she wanted to go clothes shopping. She's trying to figure out fashion right now, which is something that's so funny. I never thought she would care about. She's very much into gaming and wants to be somehow in video game development, and she's teaching herself Polish just because. That
is so Avery.
Yeah, like none of my friends know how to speak Polish, so it would be funny if I could say things to them, but they don't know what I'm saying. So she's trying to teach herself Polish. Yeah, I mean, that's just our normal. we homeschool, so COVID life is not really different for us. And so she's just really digging into Polish.
I love that. I love the drive that Avery just is. I'm learning Polish now because it's going to be hilarious that no one else is going to know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's in a strong mood that I think many of us hope to embody. Thank you, Avery, for being fearless in that way. I love that. I would love to know where you both are at right now. Debi, you had said that you're really kind of diving into the activism and have been for quite some time. Where has that led you now?
Well, I work for a few different organizations. I work for or with different organizations that are involved in LGBT advocacy. I spend a big part of my time working with schools and educators, because we were not supported by the school system when Avery transitioned, and we ended up with me leaving my job and homeschooling instead. And I didn't want any other family to have to do that. I mean, it was a struggle for us to adapt, and not everyone has the means to do that. And we were really fortunate that we could, but I don't think any family should have to go through that. A school has your kids for the bulk of the day. And we really need to have teachers and educators and classmates and peers educated on what it is to be trans. So that's really where I spend the majority of my time.
Thank you so much. And Sharon, what are you working on right now?
Well, I'm definitely learning how to be a filmmaker during a pandemic. That's one thing. And I have a couple projects in the works, and one in particular that I have been shooting very safely, figuring out how to shoot through windows and outside and all kinds of things like that. So, and my project that I'm working on has to do with the American flag and other flags too.
Okay, so staying tuned to find out what that will mean. And we are coming up pretty close to the end of our 30 minutes, but I did want to know, what impact were you truly hoping to get with this documentary and with showcasing these fantastic stories of youth? And have you felt like those are being accomplished, right? That we're being able to have some of those goals showing up after we've started doing the film festivals and where they've been showcased?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think there are the more intimate goals for the subjects, where I really want them to see that their stories make a difference and that it was really worth sharing their stories. And then the larger context goals are to to help people see things and understand things about a trans journey that they may not have been aware of. And to just, and in terms of just relating to people and just being an ally. But then also we're going to really need more acceptance and understanding in terms of the like legislation, some of the threatening things that are coming up. So so those are some of the bigger goals that I hope we get some traction in.
Thank you. And Debi, did you have anything to add for goals that could be completely different or the same?
I think my goals are really the same as Sharon's. I want trans kids to see themselves in the film, but I also want parents to see that as parents in the film, we make mistakes. We're not perfect. We come up against things that we're not really prepared for, and we have to figure it out. There wasn't a guidebook when we started this. There are some great books and resources out there from therapists now, and I encourage people to go find those. But also, what I think most of us and the stories show is kids do better when parents are supporting them, when they're asking questions and they're letting kids figure it out and lead the way. And I just want more families to recognize that it's okay to trust your kid. It's a journey, and you're all going to go through some things together. And there will be ups and downs and crying and laughing. And that's part of what makes it beautiful. As an activist, I do want to have more allies come out of this. The trans community is pretty tiny, but that doesn't mean that the needs are any less and that discrimination should be allowed. So when things do come up in state legislatures or in local communities to pass non-discrimination ordinances, go out there and be an ally. Trans people are around you. You've probably had a conversation with someone that you didn't know was transgender, and you survived it. So don't be afraid, get out, be an ally, and let's just make the world a better place for everybody.
Well, thank you so much. I think that is a fantastic message to leave our guests and viewers with. And I wanted to remind everybody that they can view Transhood through HBO on November 12th. And thank you both so much, Sharon and Debi, for sharing your insight and your stories, and Avery's stories and the stories of the other youth represented in Transhood. And if you haven't had the chance to watch this amazing, amazing film, please, please do. You have until October 25th to finish the festival, and that is definitely in the lineup and is completely magical and really important for us to be viewing. And I wanted to thank you both for joining us again.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, and have